We'll say Shabbat Shalom again. Y'all there? I saw you bopping around to a couple of these melodies today. We're alive. We're in our seats. The greatest homileticians avoid kitsch. The greatest scholars of the rabbinic period were lauded for their ability to masterfully string obscure texts together, offering relevant and meaningful wisdom to their listeners. Similarly, the most skilled modern preachers, too, challenge their listeners with carefully curated sermons that avoid cliché. This is why preaching on July 4th is so difficult. As a Christian colleague writes, we preachers often err in multiple ditches this holiday weekend. Some use this weekend as a bully pulpit to rail against the institutional injustices of the so-called American dream. Others demonstrate how the values on which the United States was founded are rooted in faith and Bible, or how the civil rituals of July 4th align with our Jewish tradition and story. Some ignore the holiday altogether to avoid sounding too political, and so they just stick to Scripture. Each of these perspectives have some truth, offer some valid admonition to our society, and have inherent blind spots. They're expected. They're too easy, too kitschy. It would be too simple to share a sermon with you tonight about the Jews' contributions to the American Revolution. My favorite story, a legend really, is that of General George Washington and Chaim Solomon. As the story goes, an American midrash really, Washington burst into Solomon's Philadelphia synagogue one Yom Kippur in either 1779 or 1781, pleading for donations to support a starving Continental Army. An early hero of American Jewry, Solomon was said to write a check to Washington right there on the holiest day of the year, providing necessary tzedakah that helped fuel the American victory. Likewise, it would be too simple to share a sermon tonight, July 4th, on why hot dogs are the greatest American Jewish food. Perhaps you're already aware the story of the hot dog begins in 19th century New York with two German Jewish immigrants. In 1870, Charles Feltman sold sausages in Coney Island. They were pork and beef. So they would be less messy for his customers to eat on the go, Feltman served hot dogs in buns. In 1916, the Polish Jewish immigrant and former employee of Feltman named Nathan opened his own all-beef hot dog stand, Nathan's Famous, to compete with his former boss. And as they say, the rest is history. Tonight, you won't get a sermon about hot dogs or how a Jew wrote God Bless America, or about our people's many contributions to this country's founding and flourishing. I won't share that in literature, we had Saul Bellow, Philip Roth, Cynthia Ozick. In science, names like Richard Feynman and Jonas Salk, who helped eliminate polio from the planet. In law and civil rights, Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Felix Frankfurter, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who marched arm in arm with Dr. King. In music and the arts, Leonard Bernstein, Paul Simon, Steven Spielberg, and Barbra Streisand, and so many in business. Tonight, you won't get a retelling of our people's story in America and all that we have done in and for this country. Instead, I want to look to the future and all that we must continue to do for ourselves and for others. I want to remind us tonight that for a relatively tiny population, we have made enormous impact here in America. We have much to be proud of, to be grateful for, and optimistic, even in the face of unprecedented anti-Semitism and real struggle. We must continue to model the best of what our faith teaches. As one of my mentors recently preached, living our values outwardly isn't performative, it's essential. As Jews and members of Jewish families, this moment right now that we find ourselves in, as precarious as it might seem to many, offers us unique opportunity to make our commitments visible and real, to move our convictions from the heart to the doorpost. Walk outside with your Jewish identity on your face, in your hands. Make it real, to shine a light into the world that so desperately needs it. We have contributed so much more than hot dogs. We have changed the course of history, and we are needed to help bring wholeness to our world. I'll leave you with inspiration from this week's Torah portion. This week's portion reveals the grim reality of desert war and of death as the people mourn the passing of both their beloved Miriam and Aaron, Moses' siblings. However, rooted in ritual and buoyed by God's deep love for the people, the resilient Israelites, despite deep disappointment and anxiety about an unknown future, instead, they focus on new opportunities, and they find courage to walk further into the wilderness, certain that they will one day make it to a promised land. We too must turn to faith and grounding rituals like Shabbat to remember our strength and our enormous potential to continue on our journey forward. May we find ways to publicly make our commitments visible and real. In our actions, may we build a better, more just and whole world, shining a light multiple times more intense than the fireworks we will soon hear, into a world which so desperately needs us right now. Shabbat Shalom.